Hi everyone, I'm Maimah Karmo. I'm your host for Breathe TV. So while we hear about breast cancer a lot in women, we don't hear about breast cancer a lot in men. We have two men today who are amazing advocates and warriors in their own right, Alex Harrington and Harvey Singer. Alex and Harvey, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Likewise.
So we don't oftentimes hear about men living with breast cancer. I'd love to hear your stories. Why don't we start with Harvey?
I was diagnosed with male breast cancer in 2008. I felt a little lump under my left nipple. I had been warned by my sister, who was a 3-time breast cancer survivor at the time, that this was potentially I could be carrying a genetic mutation that she had identified as the BRCA2 mutation. Kind of surprised me, overwhelmed me, took me into places I never thought I'd go. After having a mastectomy of my left breast and follow-up chemo, 18 months later, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer caused by the same mutation. Through the years, I've decided to use my platform and my disease as a way to reach other men and make them aware that they could get breast cancer, they can die from breast cancer. I know that, every year there's somewhere between 2,600 or so men diagnosed, and the fatality rate is almost 4.5 times that percentage-wise to female breast cancer because of late diagnosis. So we started the His Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation in 2011 and have used that to help other men throughout the world who contact us to help them navigate the waters, because being a guy with a woman's disease is not an easy navigation.
You say it so gracefully, but I know it's a lot. And I know being a man, having woman's disease, like you said, is a difficult thing because a lot of men don't get breast cancer. Can you share with the audience what it felt like to deal with this?
It was a little unusual. Obviously, the world's not set up for guys. So I didn't look at it as a gender-specific disease. I looked at it as a disease. It's just that the world wasn't ready for us. I take it back to the 1950s, where women's breast cancer was kind of swept under the rugs. Women had it and nobody talked about it. It was kind of that way. Nobody wanted to talk about it. I don't view cancer as gender-specific. I know a lot of people do. There are cancers that are gender-specific, like ovarian cancer in women. I just view it as a life-threatening disease. I tried to push through that gender portion of it, identity, and realized I was dealing with a life-threatening illness. I didn't worry about the pink gowns and diagnostics. I didn't worry about the other women that were being diagnosed or having diagnostic tests at the same time I was. I just wanted to utilize the best doctors and methods I could to ensure that I could keep on living. I do help other guys that do view it gender specific. I did have some friends at the time that, would tease me a little bit and say, oh, you want to play from the red tees at golf and things like that. That kind of made it a little bit, tried to be lighthearted, but I never took it that way. And I don't think guys should take it that way. I think they just have to plug through and find the best doctors and find the best methods to ensure that their treatment comes out on the positive for them.
Right. And so you're helping other men to get through this breast cancer journey by offering early education awareness, because I think what you mentioned before, that men get breast cancer not as often as women, but the mortality rate is higher because they're being diagnosed at later stages. So is your work primarily on early detection and awareness for men?
So our work shifted a little bit. We started with a male breast cancer foundation. We've shifted a little bit into a complete genetic cancer foundation awareness so that people understand the risks, which helps them screen earlier, be aware. The problem with males and breast cancer is that they're diagnosed later because they ignore the symptoms. Guys ignore symptoms. Guys tend to think it's something else. It's a nature of being a guy. Okay, I pulled a muscle, so I have this problem on my left side. Even after my sister warned me, I looked at my left nipple and saw it was indenting. And I said, oh, well, maybe I just put on a few pounds and I'm not in good shape right now. Men tend to ignore symptoms in front of them. So the work in our foundation is to A, make guys aware that they can get this, B, teach them how to screen themselves. If you go on my website, we teach you how to do a self breast exam. And then once diagnosed, we help those guys navigate the waters, because they still are murky for a guy. They're still a little bit more difficult for a guy than they are for a female. So it's 3-pronged, bring a light to light, whether you might be carrying this, somebody in your family, and then get them to notice any changes in their body and force them to do something about those changes.
That's really wonderful. I mean, it's not an easy path to tread, because you're right, it's found often more in women, and men tend to not be looking because it's just not a common thing to find in men. So what you're doing is kind of, paving a new frontier for men to be better advocates when it comes to their best breast health and awareness. So Alex, tell me about your journey with cancer. And you've had cancer 3 times?
So I'm currently in my 3rd bout. Technically, there's 4 altogether. I don't count the first one. It was actually in Germany. It was in 2007, where my wife noticed that there was a small little brown spot on my left shoulder that was, the color was not, it just didn't seem right to her. She encouraged me to go see a dermatologist, but for almost 6 months, I deflected her recommendations. I've used excuses such as I'm too busy with work, and other excuses that I think men tend to use, such as I feel fine, I feel great, there's nothing wrong with me, I know my body. And she's a beautiful wife. Her name is Teresa. She, at that point, ignored me and said to the doctor, "You need to look at his left shoulder." And of course, I was quite upset because I wanted to leave, but she was determined for him to look at that left shoulder. He did. He suggested to do a biopsy. And then my determined wife, she said, "Do it now." And they did.
People have rashes, you have bumps, you have different skin discolorations. When do you have to think about the fact that this could be something that's not normal?
Well, you know what? I was very blessed to marry my wife. During her time in Canada, when she would go to a doctor's office, they would have those ABCs of melanoma, and she would kind of study it. As any great wife, she was very concerned about my health. When she noticed that small brown dot, and it was about the size of a pencil eraser. It was the diameter. It was very small. One side was brown, the other side was kind of black. And so that's when she started encouraging me to go see a dermatologist. And looking back, I remember as a Marine, when I was in the desert, 29 Palms, and also in other places in the world, sometimes when we're digging a foxhole or doing work outside, we have our shirts off and we'll get sunburned. But I never even thought of possibly having melanoma. Thankfully, my wife knew what she was looking at. This is where I count my first cancer fight. They found a fist-sized tumor underneath my left shoulder, which was obviously the same area from that small brown dot. And then, unfortunately, the second bout came about in 2016, where they found a tumor in the left leg. And then, unfortunately, the third bout, they found 3 other tumors within the pelvis area near the bladder area. Unfortunately, they cannot resect it because of the location, but through the systemic treatments and just the various regimens they put me under, I am looking good and feeling well today. I technically still have the 2 tumors. They've been active for over 2.5 years, but they've decreased in size and also in activity. I'm treated at the Shar Cancer Center in Fairfax, Virginia. My oncologist is very pleased of how they're non-aggressive at this time, but they do put me through a PET scan every 3 months to just monitor them and just basically being prepared for the next treatment when they do metastasize. So that's where we are today.
That's quite a story. You've been through a lot and you seem really positive and optimistic, and attitudes can do a lot through this journey just to get you through it mentally and spiritually. And your wife seems amazing as well. She seems to be your biggest advocate. You're blessed to have her and she's blessed to have you.
She knew how to navigate the system and arrange and coordinate the appointments. She really went to it. And so for her and I, we just became, I would say, 2 helpmates. She took care of the medical administration, and I was the guy who basically did what I was told when it comes to getting poked and prodded. And we've been kind of keeping that same rhythm through the bout of cancer. She's definitely amazing. The only thing that when it comes to breast cancer, I would say this, and I'll be honest with you, Harvey, I allowed it to go in one ear and out the other, was at a meeting. We had a political appointee whose wife was fighting breast cancer. And then he mentioned that, hey, make sure you guys get checked. And he said, men, you too, you can get breast cancer. And of course, I'm at this meeting table thinking, Okay, I never heard of that. And of course, my mind went to other things. I don't want to say it's ironic, but 2 weeks later, I was diagnosed with, stage 3 melanoma. I was that typical guy who just, well, it's not part of my life. I'm not going to think about it until it did actually come knocking on my door. At times, I have to wear a compression sleeve with a gauntlet. And of course, the one thing when I order them, most of their market is for females. And of course, they have all these pretty designs. And of course, as a guy, I'll say, do you have anything with flames or camouflage? But when I do wear it, I have a better understanding, because when I meet somebody, a woman who has a compression sleeve, I'll look at her and I say, are you a breast cancer fighter or a survivor? And she says, yes. How did you know? And I said, well, your compression sleeve. I have mine too.
Yeah, no, that's really important, because you spoke about women that you see now where you recognize what they go through when they have breast cancer, meaning with the compression garments and having lymph nodes taken out. And so, Harvey, for you, a lot of people who get breast cancer are female. So how do you get that level of support that you need? Because, like Alex said, it's usually a woman's disease.
Well, the breast cancer system's not set up for guys. That's what I noticed early on. I'm not the kind of person to sit back and say, okay, my doctor told me to do this, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I don't go that route. I took my disease on as a challenge. I decided that became my new full-time job. And I tell this to a lot of people on almost a daily, weekly basis. If you're diagnosed, Alex, with melanoma or any other form of cancer, this is now your full-time job. You have to learn everything possible about your specific disease. In breast cancer alone, there's over 10,000 permutations of breast cancer. There's no cookie cutter treatment. There's no one size fits all type of system. And when it comes to a guy, breast cancer for most people is hormonally driven, meaning that it's ER, estrogen, PR, progesterone positive, and the breast cancer cells feed off of the estrogen and progesterone in your body. Guys obviously manufacture different levels of hormones than women, and they wasn't set up for that. So in 2008, when I was diagnosed and I first started to navigate the system, I said, okay, what's wrong with this system? Why is it not set up for guys? I mean, yes, there's not that many of us, 2,600 a year or so, that are diagnosed, but don't those 2,600 people matter? And why aren't we being more specific? Through the journey, I found out that, like Alex alluded to, not all guys are aware that they can get this. I can't tell you how many doctors and medical professionals I've run into that didn't know that guys could get breast cancer. When I told them, they were, really? You can get breast cancer? I'm like, yeah, I do have breasts. They're just not the size that you're used to thinking of, but they're still breasts. And, it's just not set up that way. So you have to learn that this system is not set up for you. And one of the reasons we started the foundation was to help others navigate. When I started to look and research, 2008, the internet was still prominent. It wasn't where it is today, but it was prominent. There was a lot of information on there. What wasn't on there was information about guys and how to deal with breast cancer. There was information about a guy that passed away and his family set up a little website to pay homage to him, but it wasn't set up for information and access for information to how to actually navigate the system. So you have to really figure it out. I left my surgeon's office and he said, you're good. He said, stage 1, we've got everything. There's no extenuating disease. You'll be good. You'll just take a pill a day for the next 5 years and you can go on with your life. The pill a day was tamoxifen, which is a hormonal suppressant so that your cancer cells don't continue to thrive on the hormone. And they said, we'd like you to see an oncologist. And I realized that they sent me to a general oncologist. At this point, I said, you know what? I don't need a general oncologist. I need a breast oncologist. I need to get more specific. And at that point, the light went on and said, you know what? These guys don't all follow the same playbook. They don't all do the same thing. So I went and saw a breast oncologist. And then my breast oncologist recommended chemotherapy for me, which I was shocked and taken aback, and I didn't want to have. Nobody wants to really go through that, especially since I didn't really have extenuating disease. So I started seeking out other opinions and other oncologists. I ended up seeing 4 different breast oncologists, one in California, one in Boston, one in New York City, and as well as mine. At that time, I was living in Rochester, New York. And what came back to me was they all thought I should have some sort of a chemo, but there were 3 different regimens for chemo. to me, it was ridiculous. They said, don't you guys all read the same manual? Don't you all do the same thing? And I found out that they don't, because oncology is basically a guess and throw something at it and hope it works industry. They're doing the best they can to find the best treatment for you, to keep you going, to keep you alive. But you get one shot at doing that, right? They get multiple shots. If they give you the wrong treatment and you die, they go to the next patient. You don't get that ability. You have one shot to make it right. So you better be 100% sure of what you're doing. And it just made me feel like, okay, you know what? I'm in charge of my own care. These doctors are great. They're smart people and they know what they're doing, but it's not a cookie cutter industry. You have to know what's best for you. And you're in charge of your own chance of life. So you better start researching and find out what makes sense for you, and be able to challenge your doctors. I tell people this all the time. You can fire your doctor. If you had a bad mechanic, you'd fire your mechanic. If you had a bad plumber, you'd fire your plumber. But people are so scared to challenge their doctors in this world. You know, look, it's a tough diagnosis. You get it, you're hit over the head. You don't know what to do. Okay, I'm just going to do whatever my doctor tells me because he's smarter than I am. And they never challenge their doctor as to, well, what else can I do? What other treatments are there available? Why did I get this? What was it caused from? Genetic cancers like mine have all kinds of new treatments specifically for that genetic cancer. For BRCA patients, whether it's breast, prostate, pancreatic, ovarian, and even some melanoma, which is, a question I had to Alex, there are things called PARP inhibitors, which are fairly new on the market, and they only work with those genetic cancers. So don't be afraid to challenge your doctor. Don't be afraid to learn more about it. Breast cancer in guys is not specifically set up for guys, so it makes it even more challenging. Your will to do this should be even stronger.
I know for me, when I got diagnosed, mammograms weren't recommended at under 45 years old. There wasn't a lot out there with young adult breast cancer screening awareness and support. So I had to really figure out a way to not just help myself, but other women who are going through this at my age, which was 32 years old. And so I had to make a way for myself and other people, and it was not easy because there are all these systems in place. There were adult, oncology groups, meaning people over 45 and, over that age, and pediatric, but it wasn't set up for young adults. So is that part of your plan, is to really help to make things better for men who are facing breast cancer?
Our plan is a little different. My sister, like you, was diagnosed very young. Her first breast cancer diagnosis was 37. So we understand the genetic mutation link. I think the genetics play such a huge part in this, and why I'm such an advocate for the genetic side of this. Every week we're finding more and more mutations. And part of the problem with male breast cancer and the BRCA world in general is that because it's named BRCA, which stands for BR breast, CA cancer, they think that guys can't get it, they can't carry it. But half the BRCA mutation carriers in the world are male. It's just fact. You can get it passed down from your father, you can get it passed down from your mother, you can pass it to your daughter, you can pass it to your son. If you know your risks, it's a lot easier to know how to screen. My kids know their risks, my sister's kids know their risks, they screen differently. If you have this diagnosis, if you know your mutation, you can force the insurance companies to help you screen earlier. Prostate cancer normally is they'll say that 8 out of 10 guys, if they live to 80, are going to get some sort of prostate cancer. But the genetic form of prostate cancer that I had starts, they call it early onset. It starts much earlier in life. I was diagnosed at 57 with my prostate cancer. I actually think I had my prostate cancer before I had my breast cancer, but they misdiagnosed it. That's another story. If you know your risks, you know how to screen better. My foundation can't change the way the system works. We can put pressure on the system, but we can't change the system. What we can change is the perception of the system. And that's what we work at every day, understanding your risks, understanding how to do a self-breast exam, understanding that you can get breast cancer specifically, as a guy, and that you could pass it down to your son or your daughter. I just think there's this huge misconception that existed 10, 12 years ago, and we've been able to alter that a little bit. We were the first male breast cancer awareness foundation in the world when we set ours up. Now there's multiples, there's other guys, and we're happy to work with them. We work in conjunction because we all have the same goal. The goal is to alleviate men dying from this. You're going to get it, Men are going to get it. It's not going to stop happening. A couple years back, I had a friend come to me, a very close friend, and he said, I had my PSA, and it's still way under 4, but it kind of changed, and they want me to do this, and I really don't want to do it. And I'm like, look, they set up this number for men for PSAs. They think 4 is like the threshold. It has nothing to do with that number 4. It has everything to do with the number before it and the number after it. So if you do your PSA and it's 2.2, and a year later it's 3.2, the alarm bell should be ringing off in your head, because that's called the velocity change, and any velocity change is an indication. And sure enough, he had prostate cancer. And I probably helped save his life, as he tells me all the time, because I forced him to do that. So you gotta understand the system. You gotta navigate, know your risks. If you know your risks, you can change the system. We can't change the system from the top down. There's too much red tape in it, but we keep putting pressure on them to do so.
So knowing your risk is so important. Talking about risk, most men I know are taught to be strong and steady and be the rock. I have 4 brothers, and they're like, I'm the eldest, but they're just like, all macho and everything. I know when I got diagnosed, they were terrified, and their reactions were all different. One's more sensitive, the other's wouldn't show emotion, one never cried, and one never talked to me about it till after I was done with treatment, because he just couldn't face the fact of what may happen to me. So back to Alex, how do you navigate a journey where the gender perception is one that doesn't show emotion, that doesn't cry, or has to be strong? And cancer is a very human journey. It's very personal. And no matter how positive you are, I know I am, a lot of my friends are, there comes a point where you're looking at and thinking, what's going to happen to me? There are days when you're by yourself in your room and you're like, is this it? Or, do I have the strength for the next treatment? How do you deal with the perception of what a man should be on the outside and manage your emotions on the inside?
I used to box for AAU, joined the Marine Corps. A little bit of a roughneck, actually, in high school. My senior year in high school, I got kicked out for fighting every Tom, Dick, and Harry. So I guess in some ways I would be considered kind of that tough misfit, if you will. But when cancer hit me, a phone call from my primary care doctor, I stopped listening. I was looking at my computer, but I wasn't even seeing the computer. I went numb. And so everything that I thought of me before that moment, it fizzled away. It went away. I say, hey, I just need to hang up. I need to digest this. I need to I didn't really know what to do, how to handle it. So when we hung up the phone, I went to my boss's office, and I fell on my knees. I was crying. He was actually a Border Patrol agent, and he knelt beside me, and I was so in angst and so in crying, also angry, because I ripped part of his uniform. I was shaking his shoulders, like, why? And so that was my first moment of receiving the news. It literally brought me to my knees. And of course, my wife, when it comes to being that strong man, my wife and I, we both bawled. Not because of the cancer, though. For me, it was about potentially being ripped away from my wife. That is what took me down. And of course, at 3 a.m. that next day, I got up and I went out to the balcony. We live in a high rise, and I looked up into the sky and I said to him, I'm just going to put myself in your hands, and you determine the outcome, but give me the strength. My wife and I again cried, and it was such a heavy cry that we never done that before. And after that cry, she went to work on the medical administration side, because like 4 a.m. she went to the computer. I'm like, what are you doing? And she says, I'm not accepting these appointment dates. I'm moving them out. It's funny that the Marine kicked in. It wasn't the tough man Marine. It was the Marine being obedient, because as a Marine, you're told what to do and you do it. If somebody who has a cancer diagnosis, who thinks they can do it on their own, they're trying to put the ocean in a bucket. They can't. They just can't, especially as a man. And I love what Ananias Seneca once said, if you're not willing to take care of yourself and take care and make sure you're healthy, do it for those loved ones around you. And if you're not even willing to do that, Ananias said, maybe you should be dead then. Because our fight as a man should be actually for our loved ones. And that's why I'm still alive. Because of Teresa, I can't bear the thought of not being with her, or her actually, more so, her enduring life alone. So I do what I have to do to make sure I can take each day, add it to my life path, because I want to make sure that I stay with her as long as I can, because I can't bear the thought of her facing a life when I pass. But yeah, the masculine, the perceptions of being strong, It entirely changed from the moment of that phone call in 2013 and what I see today. I'll be honest with you, everything I've learned as the perceptions of what a man should be, they went out the door. The only thing that stayed in the integrity of the response to my cancer was the Marine came out, not the tough Marine, but what they taught us as a Marine, especially when I had to go into Kuwait. You do what you got to do for your buddy. And for me, with cancer, I do what I got to do for my wife, who really is my cancer buddy.
That is so profoundly beautiful. As you were talking, I'm just imagining you getting that call and then falling to your knees. And then your first thought is, I got to do what I got to do for my wife, for my family, and for her. And that love is so profound and so deep. The love for other. When you have this disease, my first thought was my daughter. I thought she's 3 years old. I thought if I die, she will never know me. She will never know her mother's love for her. She will never know that the smell of her neck, this little spot here, like when she's sleeping, I go and smell her neck, and like that makes my heart so happy. She'll never know that I know every single hair on her head, and I know how her toes look, each one of them, and I know the pads on her hands. Because your biggest urge is to live, to do better for the ones you want to protect and you want to care for. Thank you for sharing that so vulnerably. For our guests who are watching, we know men don't get breast cancer as often, but men do get breast cancer and other cancers as well. So it's so important to be aware of your body, your family health history, especially for men with the BRCA mutation can happen. It's important to have that advocate, a friend or a wife who says, no, we want the next test, or no, you will not go home right now. And then having support during the journey as well, whatever that support is, whether it's people helping you in the home or people helping you with your emotional journey, bringing food over and so forth. And men have feelings too. Men are actually, I find, feel more than women sometimes. They just hide it really well. And the cancer journey of any kind of cancer brings that out. And so look at your man, check his body out, ask him questions, have to talk with your husband or boyfriend's family to help him with that conversation. So as you go through cancer as a patient, what are some of the things that you've learned about yourself and how that's changed your life?
So I'm not a Marine. Yes, I thought of myself as a man, but I never thought of myself as, the manly man. But, it does change your life. It changed your life in so many ways. And I did think of my children. For me, it just became a new job. It just became a new career. It became an essential career. I now had 2 full-time jobs. I still have my full-time job working, and I had my full-time job trying to fight my disease. And now I have a 3rd full-time job of trying to advocate with others for it. People ask me all the time, they say, well, how do you do both things? I said, I have 2 full-time jobs, one that pays me and one that rewards me. Because every time I can use my platform, my foundation to help another guy, to save another guy's life, it's much more rewarding than the paycheck I get every 2 weeks. It's interesting because Alex talks about his wife and how she was, such an important support system for him. In my case, my sister was my support system because she had been through 3 breast cancer diagnoses before myself. And, I first leaned on her for some information, and we've grown up, if you want to call that, grown up together in this world, this cancer world. Since that time, she's had her 4th diagnosis. So my sister's a 4-time survivor. So we've kind of leaned on each other. But in 2016, my wife was actually diagnosed with bladder cancer, which is very unique because most women that are not smokers do not get bladder cancer. They have no idea where it came from at the time. So she got a disease that guys usually get, and I had a disease that women usually get. We kind of took reverse roles. Turned out we're still not sure, 100% sure where the bladder cancer came from. We have some ideas now that we've been able to research it. And then she had a second bout of it a year and a half later. She still screens just the way I screen. I mean, it just changes how you live your life because of the screening process. Alex goes for PET scans every 3 months. I'm constantly doing PSAs because once you have prostate cancer and your prostate's removed from a full prostatectomy, the only way they can really keep up with it is to check your PSA. After my prostate cancer diagnosis, I did have surgery to remove it. Your PSA should be 0. It started to creep back up. And I actually had a urologist at the time, it's fine, it's just up to 0.05. It's not really a big deal. We don't like to do anything until it gets to 0.19. And I'm like, well, wait a second. We know it's going in the wrong direction. I'm not about to sit around and wait for this thing to become fully metastasized throughout my body. What can I do? And he said, well, we can hook you up with a radiation oncologist. You can talk to them. And so he did. And I pushed him. I said, look, I don't really want to have radiation therapy, but obviously something's gone the wrong place. And I ended up doing something called salvage radiation, which I never even heard of, but I found out about it. And basically they took my pelvic bed and I went through 39 radiation treatments, which were not fun. They were actually almost harder than chemo in a lot of ways. So eventually I went through the 39 treatments, and sure enough, after 4 weeks after the final treatment, my PSA started to come down. And then 4 weeks later, it came down a little further, and then it went back down to 0. And it's been 0, thank goodness. I'll touch wood for that. So it changes your life because you have to just be aware. You can't just say, and I've met people like this, okay, everything is good. I'm just putting it aside. I'm going to go back and live my life, because it's going to come back and get you at some point if you're not careful with it. The way to keep living your life is to be able to nip it in the bud, find it early, and treat it early. You know, if you see something coming up, and even if your doctor doesn't think that it's time to do something, challenge them. My breast oncologist was a woman. I challenged her on her treatment, and I ended up doing a treatment that she didn't even want me to have. And I said, look, this is what I think I should have. And she said, well, you know, you have a very aggressive form of breast cancer. Don't you want the most powerful medicines we can give you? It's like, well, not if it's going to give me leukemia or lymphoma, which is what one of those medicines did, you know, was the cause for it. And I challenged her and I took it out. And look, these are hard decisions for a patient. I'm not, you know, a medical scientist. I'm not a doctor. I've learned almost to be a doctor, but I'm not one. And sometimes you make decisions that are life determining. I took this medicine out, and that was 11 years ago now, and I'm still okay. And I'll never know if I made the right decision, but I had to make the decision that was best for me. So my advice is, you know, understand your disease, challenge your professionals, make sure you do your screenings on time when you need them. I can't be a tough Marine, but I'm going to be tough enough to look my doctor in the face and say, tell me why this is what you want me to have, or tell me what I shouldn't have, or go research it and then come back and challenge him again.
So I like to piggyback on that. The one thing I can definitely take note on, and I agree with Harvey, is that you're going to get scars, both internal, emotionally, also physical. I mean, there's going to be scars. I call it the Medal of Honor, so to speak. The living outweighs that risk. But unfortunately, my left eye is now permanently damaged, the muscle. But still, that is the risk you take on when you want to live a long life. And not just mostly for you, but for your loved ones. But for me, when it comes to making a decision to take on a certain treatment or a certain drug, I know that each one had a risk, and each one kind of left a permanent scars, so to speak. Because at the end of the day, is staying with your loved ones. They don't care. My wife doesn't care if my left eye is now sagging a bit, or the left eyelid. And of course, when she kisses me on my forehead here, I can't feel anything. But you know what? Those are the battle wounds that makes us stronger. We appreciate life even more. And I'll end it with this. You're always going to take on risk. You always have to make hard decisions. At the end of the day, my life with my wife, my life at work, my life serving community, I'm still enjoying it. I'm still living it. And I don't regret none of the decisions that we made during this cancer journey, because life does leave scars. And that's what makes life beautiful in some ways, because we learn from those scars and we become better through those scars.
Well said. I always turn my scars into stars, you know, because if you don't have the scars that took out the tumors and all the things we have done to our body during cancer treatment, you don't have what's left of you to be alive in this world, to love your loved ones, to give back. I mean, I'm 15 years cancer-free now, and I have many friends who I've lost along the way, but when I got that diagnosis, I thought I would do whatever it takes to make sure that I'm here for my daughter. And however long I'm here, I want to change the world by making others have the education they need to have around cancer, the advocacy and support, the tools and the empowerment, and most importantly, that compassion and love to realize they're not alone, because people feel alone during cancer. You feel very alone in your body, and you're not. You have people that love you, your wife, you have your sister, You have friends and you make community that you wouldn't have had ordinarily. So you both have been so inspiring. I just really want to honor you for being so vulnerable today. What are 3 things you would each share with the audience in terms of, going through a cancer journey, what they should know, and how they can live more empowered during and after their cancer journey?
Maimah, you said something there that I have to challenge. You said you're 15 years cancer-free. It's something that we talk about every day through my foundation, my sister and I. As a cancer patient, you're never free. You could be cancer not diagnosed at this time, NDA, no diagnosis available, but you're never free. You're always going to be a patient. You're always going to be free to the next test, the next screen, the next scan, the next blood work. It's just something that I don't like those words because I just don't believe in them. Maybe it's a personal thing, but when people say, hey, I'm cancer free, it means that they can go on back to their lives, and they can't really you can never go back to your life as it was, because you still have to be vigilant. You still have to take care of what's in front of you. It's just something that always bothered me because I have not felt free since the day I got that diagnosis. As far as what I would do going forward, again, be as vigilant as you can, understand your risks, understand your family's risks from your genetics. Every day we find more and more mutations that are caused from a family origin that are running through your system. And I'm not saying go to 23andMe or any of those other online tests. I'm trying to real genetics, find out what the real causes of anything in your heritage might be. If your grandparents died, if you're an aunt and uncle that died, they're getting better. When you go for your breast cancer screenings, you'll actually see family questions on there. Who in your family has had breast cancer, prostate cancer, ovarian cancer in your background. Use that information to make sure that you screen in the best possible way. Understand that, yes, you want to stay here for your family, but understand that it's the most important thing you can do is to understand everything, every permutation of your disease, and use that information to help you, to help guide you. And don't be afraid to challenge your doctors. Don't be afraid to say, what if I go somewhere else? Getting a second opinion is not only your right, it's what you should be doing. And don't feel bad that you're going to challenge somebody to get a second or a third or a fourth opinion. There's so much new medicine out there. It's changing. Cancer treatments and cancer diagnosis are changing so rapidly by the minute that you have to stay on top of it. And your doctors are so busy, oncologists are so busy that they can't even keep up with it. Yes, they go to classes, they do stuff online, but they can't keep up with it either. Most oncologists are aligned with some specific, very important cancer hospital. In New York, it's Sloan Kettering. In Boston, it's Dana-Farber. If you're in Texas or California, it's MD Anderson. They're just following protocols based on that hospital. But you have the ability to go to all these and look at all the studies. Everything's online. Take it as a challenge, seek it out, find out what's best for you, and then bring it back to your medical professional and have that discussion forthright and say, what's best for me and my family to make sure that I can continue to be here for my family. That's what I drive every day. I try and drive at home. So that's what I would suggest people do as a patient.
Thank you, Harvey. Alex?
Take care of your health. Take care of your bodies. I would say when I hear it still, I'm sure I'm talking to a few right now. When you say, oh, I know my body, I feel fine. Well, guess what? You don't know your body. You don't know what's going on inside your body. So do the annual checkups. Have a primary care doctor that you have a relationship with. Eat well. Eat healthy. More vegetables, more fruits. Take care of yourself, rest, and exercise. I think the greatest gift that you can give your loved ones, especially if you're single, and even single guys have people who care for them. Take care of your health so you can create those amazing new memories with your loved ones. So that's the first point. Take care of your health, and just know you don't know what's inside your body. You don't. Number two, I know for me, unlike you two, I don't focus on cancer every day. I actually put it in the back seat. But the one thing that we all three share in common is we do something to better the life of others. So for me, the one thing that cancer has given me is to make sure you're giving back to others, because my medical team, they kept me alive. And I had a nurse once telling me, once you get past this, or if you get past this, regardless if you get past this, you need to be giving back to others. And number three is I don't think about cancer all the time. I think more so about leaving a legacy. Each day I think about life and death. Each day I wonder how long I got. My wife and I are selling our condo, and we're talking about plans down the road. And we have to include cancer in those plans. What do we do if I pass away during that transition? We always have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. But I don't focus every day on cancer. I focus on basically what legacy can I leave behind. And so those three things I would love to leave behind. Number one, men, stay healthy for your loved ones. And two, give back to community, because that's the best medicine. And number three is living that legacy, because we all have to go. And I can say this as a cancer patient. I don't like people who are healthy. They say, well, you got to die one day. Me, I accepted the grave. But what legacy are you leaving behind when you do go?
Thank you guys so much for this wonderful conversation. It's been so enlightening. I just thank you for all you do in your work with your foundation. It's just amazing that you give back in this way and empower men. And you're just being a boss about it and speaking your truth and challenging people on the regular. That's amazing. You got to challenge people on things, and it's a very individual choice. This is cancer journey, right? It's all a matter of choice, but what's not a matter of choice is that being our own best advocates and taking care of our health and putting our families first. And so I want to thank you guys for all you do in the world, for who you are in the world, and for your energy and your spirits. And for the guests who are watching, as you've been hearing, we've met some incredible men today who are just doing some great work. And I've been sitting here just moved by their authenticity and by their experiences. And cancer is an individual decision. How you treat the cancer, how you live with cancer, and how you live after cancer. What do you call after in terms of, as we said, you heard, is it that, you have cancer and you're cancer free or cancer vigilant? And I am both. I want to live my best life every day and say, cancer, thank you for the lesson and the learning, but I want to live my life, but also not forget that it can happen again. So how do you live your life and be empowered to live that life while being aware of the risk factors and being always aware that what can happen, being proactive, being your best advocate, and staying alert for your body and what could change any day. And so again, I want to thank both of you guys, Harvey and Alex, for your time, for your edification about men and cancer in general. And thank you for being so, again, honest. Until the next time, guests, you guys be educated, be empowered, and be your own best advocate. Bye for now.